Okay, so now I'm quickly going to show you guys how to set up the animations before we get into the wall jumping, just so the game looks a little bit better, and so that you guys can put in your own animations, because I know mine are not good at all. To start off with, we're going to go onto the player, and we're going to say add component. We're going to search for animator. Now there's a difference between animator and animation. Animator is the component that allows the game object to play animations, and then animation is the different animations that it's going to play. So each animator needs an animator controller, which is, I'll show you. So we're going to make a new folder. We're going to call it animation. And then in here we're going to create a new folder called animators, and another new folder called animations. In the animators folder, right click, say create animator controller, and we're gonna call this player AC. Now under player, or we click on the player game object, and under animator we're going to drag this player AC into the controller slot. Now if you go to window, animation, animator, it should open up this tab. This window is what you use to go between different animations, and you can set the different conditions as to how it should transition to which animations and which animations it can transition between. And I'll show you how that works after we create all the different animations. Now to make the different animations, we also need to go to Window, Animation, and click on this Animation tab. And you can just dock this wherever is most convenient for you. So now with this Animation tab open, if we click Create and we go to Animation, Animations, we're going to start with the idle pose for the player, or the idle animation. We click Save. So as you can see, it automatically added up here to the animator, or the animator controller of the player. I think if you select a different game object and you click create, it'll try and add it to the animator that's attached to that game object, and if there isn't one, it just creates the animation by itself. But if you click on player, it'll automatically connect it to the controller that's part of that game object, and it'll show you all the different clips that is being used by the animator controller. So this is pretty simple. I'm just going to dock this up here. Now to make the animation, you're going to go to your assets, sprites. You're going to open up the player, and we've labeled them all nicely. So the idle animation only has two different frames, so you can just shift select both of them and just drag them up in here. Okay, so we have both frames in here now. We don't need the animator right now, so we're going to go to the scene view so we can see what the animation looks like. So now if we click play, we can see that he's spazzing out a little bit. You can turn this sample rate down if you want the animation to play a bit slower. That wasn't much though. See, it's a bit slower, but it's still not what you want. So now we can go ahead and move the keyframes around how we want it to be. We want the idle animation to make it look like the character is just standing around, just naturally moving up and down as he's breathing. So you don't want him to be moving too fast. So I'm just going to drag the second frame, say 5 seconds over, and then I'm going to copy the first frame and paste it at 10 units in. And now if we play it, you see it's just a nice little idle animation just to show that there's some life to the character. And as I said, I know these animations are terrible, so definitely feel free to use your own. This is just a little how to set that up, and then I'll show you how to set it up in code as well, and how to set up the animator. It's pretty simple. Okay, but so now that we have the idle animation going, we want the running animation. So we'll click over here where it says idle, we'll say create new clip, make sure it's in the animations folder, and we'll call this run. And once we have the running animation here, we can just go ahead and select all 4 of the running frames, which are also all terrible, by the way, just so you know. Set the sample rate to 12 as well. And if we play this, we can see him running. It's not quite the speed that we want. I'm going to go ahead and move, just separate them all. And then if we play it now, okay. So as you can see, there's a bit of a glitchy motion towards the end of the run cycle. And that's because there's 2 units between each of the frames, except for the last one where there's only 1 before it swaps or before it moves back to the first frame. So what we're going to do to fix that is just select the last frame, copy it, and paste it 1 more unit after it. So now it's going to last for 2 units as well. So we play it now, you can see it's just a continuous smooth motion of a terrible running animation. And that's the running animation done, simple as that. Now we also want to create the animation for, I'm going to create the jump animation. Set the sample rate to 12. Select all the jump sprites, drag them in. And let's play this and see what happens. Now for the jumping, I like the fast motion of the hood like flopping in the wind, so I'm just going to keep it as it is. And then the same for the falling animation. I'll call it fall, and drag in the 4 fall sprites. Set the sample rate to 12, and then we can play it. Yeah, so I like that quick motion, so I'm just going to keep it like that. Okay, so if we head to the animator now, we can see that we have all 4 of the different animations. And now to set up, now I'll show you how to set up the animator so it can transition between the different animations nicely. So when the game object gets created, the animator is going to start here by the entry point. So it's going to follow this arrow and move to the first animation and just do whatever that animation is supposed to do. And then based on conditions, it's going to move to different animations. So we want it to move into idle because the character is going to spawn standing still, so he'll be idling. And then when we try and move sideways, or when we move sideways, we want it to move between run and idle. So what you're going to do is you're going to right click on the idle animation over here, and you're going to say make transition, and then click on run. Now if you click on this little arrow, here you can see the different properties of this transition. Now for our purposes, we want to unclick has exit time, and click on this little arrow here and just drag it so that this is just a straight line over here. This makes it so that the transition happens instantly. There's no exit time or anything. And then if we click on run and we say make transition back to idle, again, untick that and drag that down. Okay, now for the conditions. So how we're going to do moving sideways is we're going to start, you click this little plus sign over here, and these are the different types of conditions you can have. So float is of course a floating point number, a number of decimal places, and based on what that number is, we can say, oh, is this number greater than or less than something, and based on that make a transition. Same for int. Bool of course is true or false, so make a transition if this is true or if it's false. And then trigger is like a boolean, except as soon as the trigger becomes true, it immediately becomes false. So an animation needs to have a exit time to use a trigger, so that because the animation, you're going to transition to the animation, and then the animation is going to run all the way through before transitioning back or to whatever thing it needs to transition next, seeing as the trigger is now false and no longer true. So we won't be using triggers yet. So we're just going to start off with a float, and we're going to call this x velocity. I want to use this to transition between run and idle. So if we go to our transition from idle to run, and over here you can see conditions, we're going to click the little plus sign, and you can see the parameter automatically popped up. But if we had more, you can click on this little arrow over here to choose the different conditions. You can have more than one condition, and then we can choose greater than, and then 0. So if the velocity is greater than 0, but we're going to change this to 0.6, 0.01. So if the velocity is greater than 0.01, transition to the idle animation, and then to go from run back to idle if velocity is less than 0.01. So, okay, now I'm going to show you how to how to set these parameters in the code, and it's very simple. So if we go back to project, scripts, player controller, we open this up, and now that we have the code open, we're going to start off by, under private rigid body 2D, we're going to create a private animator, and we're just going to call it anim. And then under start, we're going to say anim equals get component of type animator, like that. So what this is going to do is store a reference to the animator component on the game object. That way we can talk to it and make it do things. And then all the different parameters that we have, we're just going to set in update over here. So we're going to say set anim parameters, like that. And so far all we have is if I go back here, all we have is the x velocity parameter. So all I'm going to do in the code is just type anim.set, and then depending on what kind of parameter you have, if you have a boolean, if you have a trigger, if you have an int, if you have a float, we have a float in this case. So set float, and then you pass in the name of that parameter, which in our case is x velocity, and you pass in what you want it to be. So I'm going to pass in the rigid body dot velocity dot x, but the animator doesn't really care if we're moving left or right. It just cares whether we're moving at all or not. And based on our parameter doesn't go into negative numbers. It's just or it does, but our condition is if it's greater than 0.1, it's running. If it's less than 0.1, it's not running. So if the velocity ends up being negative, say we're moving left, then it's not going to run the animation. So what we need to do here is we need to say math f dot abs. So what that's going to do is take the absolute value of whatever that returns. So it's always going to, so if you have a negative velocity, it just returns that velocity positive. Simple. And so that's going to set up this parameter, and then our animation should be working. So let's see if it does, unless I forgot something. Cool, so as you can see now, when we're moving, the character running animation plays. Now we're gonna do the jumping animation. The jumping animation can be done in a very similar way, or exactly the same way, and except you have like you use your y velocity. But I'm gonna use a little bit of a different method that I want to show you guys. That is quite interesting and quite powerful to use if you are better at animating than I am. So let me show you how to do that. So if we go back to the animator and we right click anywhere and we say create state, and instead of clicking empty, we're going to say from new blend tree, and then we're going to click on this, and we're just going to rename this to rising and falling blend tree. Okay, so what and then we're going to click on jump and fall, and we're just going to click delete. So these animations are still in our project, they're just not on this animator at this moment. So when we're jumping or falling, we want to be able to go from any state to those states. So say you're running off an edge and you just want to fall straight away. You don't want to jump, like rise and fall first. You just want to go straight into the falling animation. we're just going to put the rising and falling blend tree close to this any state box over here, and then we're going to make a transition from any state to rising and falling. Click on the transition again, take away the exit time, pull this down. Okay, now for the parameter, we're going to create a new float again, and we're going to call this y velocity, and another parameter that's going to be a bool called is grounded, because now we know if we're not grounded, we're either rising or falling. So under this transition here, we're gonna add a condition, and we're gonna call this, we're gonna use the is grounded parameter, and we're gonna set it equal to false. So when we're not grounded, we know we're either rising or falling, so transition to this blend tree. Now if you double click on this blend tree, it's gonna take you to this window over here. And what a blend tree allows you to do is set up different animations based on different values for your parameter. So what you do is you click on the blend tree, and then over here on the right by motions, where it says list is empty, click the plus sign and set add motion field. And again, so now we have two different motions. Now you do this as many times as for the different animations that you have. So how I've seen this used before, where I learned about this, was in one of the Unity, one of the official Unity tutorials. And what they use this for is based on how fast the character is falling, use different animations. So when he's falling really quickly, it's, you know, he's in a lot more stretched out position than when he's just falling slowly. So so you can create like a nice arc for your falling. But we just have two different motions. We just have jump and fall. So then we can go over into our animations folder, and we can drag jump and fall into the different motions. Now we're going to untick automate threshold. I'm just going to drag fall on top of jump. And we're going to change this threshold from 0 to negative 0.1. And we're going to change jump to 0.1. So now, based on what why is this using x velocity? Oh, parameter. Change the parameter from x velocity to y velocity. And now based on what the y velocity is, so if it's less than negative 0.1, it's in the falling, it's going to run the falling animation. And if it's greater than 0.1, it's going to run the jumping animation. It's easy as that. Okay. So now if you click back up here to base layer, we just need to make a transition from the blend tree back to idle. And this condition is going to be is grounded again, and is grounded equals true. Untick has exit time, and drag this down. Okay, so this should work now. Well, first we need to set up, we need to set the parameters in the code, and we're just going to do it at the same place. So we're going to say anim.set bool, and the bool is grounded, and we're going to set this equal to is grounded. And we also have anim.set float, and this one is y velocity, and we're just going to pass in rb.velocity.y. We're not going to do absolute value this time because we want it to be able to be negative. So this should work now. So if we go back and play the game, so we can move sideways. It looks like I forgot to untick has exit time from the transition from any state to the rising and falling blend tree. So it should work now. So as you can see, when we jump, when we fall, the different animations play. So now just real quick, if I just open up my window 2D tile palette, and I just really come and erase some of these. Erase, make a little hole for us to jump into. You'll see if I don't jump and I just fall straight into the hole, I just go into the falling animation based on that. Okay, So now we're quickly going to get the camera to follow the player, which is really simple now that Unity has added Cinemachine to their collection of goodies that we can use. So no coding required from our part yet. The way we do this is you're going to go to Window, and you're going to go to Package Manager, and you're going to click on All up here. And now we need to just search for Cinemachine, which should be the first thing that we can click on in C. And then you just come up here to the right and you say Install, and just wait for this to install. Okay, so as you can see up here at the top now, Cinemachine has been added to the bar up here, and it's very simple to use. Adding the camera is super simple. You just click on Cinemachine up here, and you're going to say Create 2D Camera. And then if you click on the game object it just created, we're going to drag the player into where it says Follow over here. So now you'll see that when we play the game, when we move around, the camera does follow the player around. If we fall into the hole, it follows it. Okay. So now you can also, if we open up the game window over here, we can mess around with these different settings that it has. So the first thing we want to change is the orthographic size, which is basically going to change how close or far away the camera is from the player. I'm going to keep mine at 5. And then over here in the body, there's some issues I've had with it while working on it, where it works perfectly just every now and then, especially I don't know if it has something to do with the rotation of the character or whatnot, but the camera just like jumps just a little bit sideways, and it just doesn't look very nice. And I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the damping and the dead zone and stuff we have set up. What that is you can see over here there's this little block. Now what that's called is, it's called the dead zone. And what it means is if you move around, let me show you. Okay, so if you move in this zone, the camera doesn't move. But you saw there, the camera jumped a little bit, and it's annoying. I'm not sure why it does that. If anybody knows why it does that, please let me know. But the way I fix it is just to remove the dead zone completely, which isn't ideal. And I'm gonna be looking into it and trying to figure out why it does that. And once I know, I'll make a video on it as well. But so what the dead zone does is you can move freely in it without the camera following you. And once you reach the edge of the dead zone and you start moving, the camera starts following you. Now this blue area is called the soft zone. So when you move in that area, the camera doesn't stick to you completely, but it does follow you. And then how hardly or how much it damps the movement towards you can be set in the inspector on this side. And then the red part over here is once the character reaches that area, the camera sticks to it. So this yellow dot cannot go outside of the red area. So if you want the camera to just follow you completely, you can turn, oops, no, not that. You can make the dead zone 0. You can also make the soft zone completely 0. Oops. Make the dead zone 0. Make the soft zone 0. And now you see when we move, the camera sticks to us 100%. Yeah, and it's that simple. So now we have a camera that follows us around. Simple as that. So as you can see now, if we move left and we immediately move right, sometimes there's a bit of a, like the character is trying to run left, but he's not actually moving left or trying to run right, so it's like a little sliding motion. I'll show you guys how to fix that in another video. But yes, okay, so we have the animations working, we have jumping working. Next we're going to take a look at the wall sliding and wall jumping. That's quite a big, or it's a longer part of the project, so I'm probably going to split that up into 2 or 3 videos. Maybe just start off with just getting the wall sliding working, and then we'll do the wall jumping. But it's really simple in the end. You'll understand what I'm doing. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you found this helpful. If there's anything I didn't explain properly, or you want me to explain in more in depth, please leave a comment down below, and I'll make sure to reply as quickly as I can with better material. Anyway, thank you. Bye.